Hey guys, it's Kurt. I just wanted to bring up a subject. What if you are a law enforcement officer with one particular agency, but like me, I work in a rural environment, and you have multiple agencies that you depend on, because everybody is shorthanded anyway, plus the actual environment of being in a rural area where your closest backup could be an hour away. You don't care what color the uniform is, you don't care what patch they wear, some kind of badge, some kind of cop, and they're there to back you up. But you could be in a scenario where their agency's policy, and again, there's a difference between policy and case law as pertains to the use of force. First of all, the use of force is a Fourth Amendment issue. Are you violating somebody's constitutional rights to security in themselves, their papers, their places, blah, blah, blah. By arresting somebody, that's seizing them. Seizing is a Fourth Amendment issue. So if that's just a quick little background on it, if you're not in law enforcement and you're wondering how it's approached legally. But the big picture, case law, is what really breaks it down, at least for my agency. My agency, and we look specifically at case law. Graham v. Connor, and Scott v. Harris and Tennessee v. Gardner are the case laws that we really look at. The Graham v. Connor is the big umbrella case law that I refer to a lot in my videos. I'm sure you've heard me mention it. It's what is reasonably objective. It doesn't have to be the minimal force, it has to be reasonable force, because I think everybody understands that sometimes you have to use I'm using this much force, but I have to use this much force to control it. Anybody who's ever been in a wrestling match in school, high school wrestling, or you and your brothers and sisters were wrestling when you were kids, you understand that sometimes you have to use more force to control the other person. I think the average person is totally understanding of that. They're like, yeah, we get it. It's not like in the movies where I hope that the average person sees. It's not like in the movies where every cop is like Chuck Norris and can take out 9 ninjas surrounding them. It's quite the opposite. Most cops get 4 to 8 hours a year of training, or every other year, and I've worked with agencies that didn't get any control tactics training. Imagine if you were, my brother's a paramedic. Imagine if you're a paramedic and you are paid to do a particular function, in this case save people's lives, but yet your agency didn't give you the training you needed to do it. You had to go seek it on your own time and dollar. That's my situation, and a lot of situations across America. My agency gives me 8 hours a year. I'm the control tactics guy, so I teach those 8 hours a year. I get a lot more because I'm teaching it, and by that very nature, I know I have to be better, so I go do jiu-jitsu on my own time. I pay for it out of my own pocket. A cop shouldn't have to pay for it out of his own pocket. He should get it from his agency. But in defense of the agencies, they have only so much manpower to... If people are training, somebody's still got to be out there on the streets responding. So you literally would need double the manpower to get all the training you needed. If every officer trained control, I like the Gracies did a breakdown where they said if cops did jiu-jitsu 1 day a week, it would be enough. It's not, as in my opinion, it should be 2 or 3, 4 times a week. But if you did jiu-jitsu 1 day a week, control tactics, combatives-based jiu-jitsu, not sport jiu-jitsu, or some kind of MMA-related jiu-jitsu, grappling skills, that would be enough. But we can't do that. We just don't have that time. Plus, the money to do that is way more than most departments have. And now there's people talking about defunding the police, which means defunding money for training. And then during COVID, there's a lot of officers that aren't getting hands-on training anyway. So it's like it perpetuates on itself. You're not getting the training you need. And because of that, you're seeing more incidents of cops overreacting because they don't know what they're doing. They panic. You saw the case in LA, and that break it down, where the guy came into the police station and just started wailing at the police officer. The officer's literally backing up and turning his back, doesn't know what to do, he gets taken to the ground. The guy literally takes his gun and runs away. Luckily he ran away and he didn't use the gun on the officer. Stuff like that should never happen. If in any other profession you would have gotten the training that you needed to deal with that. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen in law enforcement. Again, it's not necessarily the agency's fault, guys. It's whoever controls the purse strings. And I guarantee you, it's not the chief of police. It's not the. It's way above that pay grade that controls the purse strings. I assure you, the sheriff doesn't, the chief doesn't, the director of law enforcement, whatever title, doesn't matter. Rose band color is still a rose. Whatever that person's in control of the agency, that he or she does not control the purse strings. For example, the chief of Seattle resigned because she finally had enough that they had defunded the police and literally cut her salary in half. And she's like, that's enough. I've tried. I've done my best. I'm Dee Mao. She left. And God bless her. I can't believe she lasted as long as she did. She's a fighter. Anyway, back on subject. So you're out there and you have a situation where you're backing up another agency. And I'll use an example. In my state that I work in, the vascular restraint, and that's what I'm going to call it. There's a lateral vascular restraint. There's, I've heard, called carotid restraint. But in jiu-jitsu terms, it's a blood choke. It's not an evil thing. It's completely in the hands of a person who knows what they're doing. It's extremely usable. It's extremely safe. It's just as safe as a taser. The taser offends people because it seems so offensive, because that's why it hurt. People are like, oh my God, that seems so awful. Where a carotid restraint is quick, it's easy, it's painless. Guys, I've been choked in jiu-jitsu. I'm smart enough to tap so I don't go completely out, although once or twice in my martial arts career I have gone all the way out. It's, you wake up trying to figure out why there's an expiration date on sour milk. You don't, you're like, what? And then you're back. Everything's fine. Temporarily dazed. I'm not saying that things couldn't go wrong. I'm just saying, in the hands of someone who knows what they're doing, it's extremely safe. Of course, leaning on them with your knee on their neck for 8-9 minutes on national TV is a good example of how a restraint of the neck is very unsafe and very stupid, very wrong. But back to subject. If you are an agency that does not authorize it, what are you going to do when you show up and somebody's using a technique that now you're involved in the arrest, or you're involved in backing up the agency, and let's just say a deputy is choking somebody because their agency is completely cool with it, but your agency, let's say you're a state officer, and your agency says no, our policy says you will not use the vascular restraint. So what do? Because now the state officer might be in trouble for assisting somebody using that technique. I don't know if I have a good answer per se, and I'm just opening it up for discussion. I'll tell you some examples from my agency. Again, we're very case law based. It doesn't matter how you get to the level of force you were using. If it was reasonably objective, Graham counter, if it was reasonably objective, it doesn't matter how you get there. It doesn't matter if like lethal force as an example, if you use your firearm, you beat them with your baton, you hit them with a rock, you run them over a patrol car, the situation deemed lethal force was necessary, then that's okay. A good example when you could use a vascular choke or vascular restraint or the carotid choke or whatever cuckoo feezy name you like calling it, vascular restraint, or the law enforcement loves their terms, and so does the military. It's a blood choke. Say I'm defending myself from a takedown and the guy grabs my gun and he's yanking on my gun, so I go for a guillotine and choke him out. Now, a guillotine in the right hands, the right person, it's going to be, the Marcellotine, and I'm not going to explain what that means, but it's very vascular. In a situation where somebody doesn't know what they're doing, it can be across the windpipe, which can be deadly. But it doesn't really matter. The guy's trying to take your gun, right? He's trying to introduce deadly force into this encounter. You tell him he's got a warrant, he's under arrest, you try to take him down, he tries to take you down because he doesn't want to go to jail. You remember the breakdown I did before where the cops started getting wailed on by the guy that didn't want to go to jail? That scenario, he didn't grab his gun. But what if you're in the middle of nowhere like me and the guy starts trying to pull your gun out of your holster? I would absolutely feel comfortable using a choke in that situation because he's turned it into a deadly force encounter. Even though the vascular restraint, the lateral vascular restraint, the carotid restraint is not in reality deadly, it can be perceived that way. So in my case, I call it a rainy day technique. where I will use it absolutely in law enforcement, but it's got to be a rainy day. It's a bad situation, like the guy's trying to take my gun, and I can articulate until the cows come home. Obviously, this is a deadly force encounter, so I use deadly force. I don't have time to break away and go for my gun, because that's usually how cops get killed with their own guns, getting wrestled over with their own gun. So I had to end the encounter as quickly as possible. 3 to 5 seconds, they're out, and now you can put them in handcuffs, and the situation is taken care of. So that is an example. I'm probably running on way too long. Let's turn this into a conversation. Please light me up in comments, light me up in emails. Give me your 2 cents and tell me what you think about agencies that have to work together and maybe have different encounters. I bring it up because a control tactics instructor with my agency was having a conversation with somebody he works with, a female officer from another agency, that brought it up with him because she knew he was in control tactics. Like, what do you think? Because she was put in that situation where the force that the officer was using was constitutionally fine. It was fine under state law, and I don't know the situation, but with his agency, it was completely fine. With her agency, it was taboo. Anyway, bring it up. Let's talk about it.
Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out.